skyscrapers of New Shanghai disgusted Ambassador Lysithea Vox. She stood at the viewport of her diplomatic quarters, mandibles clicking in irritation beneath her translucent breath mask. The city sprawled before her in a chaotic jumble of architecture that offended her Araxian sensibilities. Buildings of disparate heights and designs crammed together without pattern or harmony, transit tubes weaving between them like the confused trails of insects. How had humans managed interstellar travel when they couldn't even plan a city properly? Ambassador? The voice came from behind her, startling Lysithea from her contemplation. The Earth Diplomatic Corps sent me to assist with your mission. I'm Meridian Frost. Lysithea turned slowly, her 4 violet eyes taking in the human. Tall, for their species, with deep copper skin and silver-threaded black hair cropped close to the scalp. Their formal attire was unexpectedly restrained, perhaps the one admirable human quality. I was not informed I would have an assistant, Lysithea said, the translation device at her throat rendering her clicks and trills into the harsh sounds of English. Not an assistant, Ambassador. A liaison. Meridian's expression remained carefully neutral, but Lysithea detected a slight tension in their posture. I've studied Araxian culture extensively. My role is to help navigate Earth's complexities. Complexities, a diplomatic word for chaos. The Araxian Consortium does not require interpretation, Lysithea replied. We have studied your species for decades. Your planet's acceptance into the Galactic Assembly is merely a formality, one my superiors insisted upon despite my recommendation against it. Meridian's smile faltered only slightly. Then perhaps I can make your stay more comfortable at least. Comfort is irrelevant. Efficiency is paramount. Lysithea tapped a command into her wrist device, bringing up a holographic schedule. The assembly vote occurs in 7 Earth days. I must complete my final assessment before then. 7 days is sufficient time to see Earth's true potential, Meridian said. There's much more to humanity than appears on the surface. Lysithea's upper eyes narrowed while her lower pair scanned the data scrolling through her holographic display. Your species has a peculiar tendency toward misplaced optimism. We call it hope, Ambassador. It's gotten us through darker times than diplomatic skepticism. The directness was unexpected. Most species approach the Araxians with deference. Their position as founding members of the Assembly commanded respect throughout the galaxy. This human showed neither fear nor excessive reverence. Very well, Liaison Frost. Tomorrow you will escort me to the governance center. I must observe your leaders in their natural environment. Actually, Meridian said, stepping closer to the viewport, if you truly want to understand Earth's qualification for the Assembly, I suggest we begin elsewhere. They gestured toward the chaotic skyline. May I show you something tonight, something that might change your perspective? Lysithea's antennae fluttered with indignation. My schedule is yours to command, Meridian finished. But consider this my official recommendation as your appointed Earth liaison. 3 hours tonight. Then you can return to your predetermined observations. Lysithea considered refusing, but curiosity, a trait her species valued despite their ordered nature, tugged at her thoughts. What could this human possibly show? Her that decades of Araxian surveillance had missed? 3 hours, she conceded. Not a moment more. Meridian nodded, the ghost of a smile playing across their lips. I'll collect you at sunset, Ambassador. As the human departed, Lysithea turned, back to the chaotic cityscape, her 4 eyes reflecting the fading afternoon light. She had studied humans extensively, knew their history of violence and discord, their inefficient governance and emotional decision-making. What she couldn't understand was how such a disordered species had achieved so much, so quickly. Perhaps tonight would provide insight, or confirm her recommendation that Earth remained unworthy of the stars. The air transport hummed quietly as it ascended above New Shanghai's glittering spires. Lysithea sat rigidly in her contoured seat, all 4 eyes fixed on the rapidly shrinking cityscape below. Where exactly are we going, Liaison Frost? She asked, her translator rendering the question in crisp tones. Meridian piloted the craft with casual expertise. Mount Moirai. It's about 30 minutes from the city. They glanced at Lysithea with a hint of amusement. Don't worry, Ambassador. I'm not kidnapping you to sway your vote. Such an attempt would be futile. The Araxian Consortium makes decisions based on objective assessment, not coercion. Her mandibles clicked beneath her breath mask, the Araxian equivalent of a dismissive sniff. Of course. Meridian turned their attention back to the controls. I simply think you should see Earth from a different perspective before filing your final report. The transport banked eastward, leaving the city's illuminated chaos behind. Soon they were flying over darkness, the unpopulated wilderness that still covered large portions of the planet. Lysithea felt a momentary appreciation for this at least. The humans hadn't completely overrun their world with their disorder. When they landed on a flat outcropping near the mountain's peak, Lysithea hesitated before exiting the craft. Her environmental suit would protect her from Earth's atmosphere, but the open space made her uneasy. Araxians preferred enclosed environments, controlled, predictable spaces. It's perfectly safe, Meridian assured her, misinterpreting her hesitation. This observation point was established decades ago. Lysithea followed reluctantly, her four-jointed legs adapting to the uneven terrain with practiced ease. The mountain air was cool and clear, a stark contrast to the city's density. There, Meridian said, pointing back the way they had come. This is what I wanted you to see. Lysithea turned, and despite her diplomatic training, couldn't suppress a small chirp of surprise. New Shanghai sprawled across the horizon, a vast constellation of light against the darkness. From this distance, the chaos Lysithea had observed from her quarters transformed into something else entirely, a complex, living tapestry of illumination. The seemingly random arrangement of buildings and transit tubes now resembled a neural network, pulsing with energy and purpose. Humans have a saying, Meridian said quietly. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Up close, our cities may seem disordered, but step back. They gestured toward the glittering expanse. An optical illusion, Lysithea dismissed, though her four eyes remained fixed on the view. Pattern recognition where none exists. Is it? Meridian produced a small device and activated it. A holographic display appeared between them, showing the same cityscape but overlaid with flowing lines of data. This is a real-time visualization of New Shanghai's resource distribution, communication networks, and transportation flows. Lysithea leaned closer despite herself. The data streams moved in complex but unmistakable patterns, adaptive, responsive, constantly reorganizing to meet changing needs. Your cities appear chaotic because they're alive, Meridian explained. They evolve. The Araxian approach to urban planning is magnificent, perfectly ordered, mathematically precise, but it's static. Humans build cities that grow organically. Inefficient, Lysithea countered, but with less conviction than before. Sometimes, Meridian conceded, but remarkably resilient. When the resource wars devastated our infrastructure a century ago, our cities adapted. When the climate shift forced massive population relocations, our urban centers evolved to accommodate millions of displaced people. Lysithea's antennae twitched with reluctant interest. The consortium records note your species' unusual adaptability. It's our greatest strength, Meridian said. Not our technology or our resources, but our capacity to change, to find new paths forward when the old ones disappear. They stood in silence for several moments, watching the living lights of the city. Lysithea found herself tracing the patterns of movement, seeing for the first time the underlying structure within the apparent disorder. The stars, she said suddenly. Pardon. In ancient times, your species looked to the stars and imposed order. By creating constellations, did you not? Seeing patterns where none objectively existed. Meridian smiled. We did. Still do, in fact. Perhaps that is why you reached for them so determinedly. Lysithea's upper eyes blinked in sequence, an expression of contemplation. You saw not random points of light, but connections, possibilities. That's surprisingly poetic coming from an Araxian diplomat. Lysithea straightened, suddenly aware she had revealed too much personal thought. A scientific observation only. Your species' pattern recognition tendencies are well documented, of course. Meridian's knowing smile suggested they weren't fooled. Shall we continue to the second location? We still have 2 hours of your allocated time. Despite her better judgment, Lysithea found herself curious. Very well, though I remind you this excursion will not influence my final assessment. As they returned to the transport, Lysithea cast one last glance at the glittering city, stars brought down to earth, arranged in a constellation of human making. For the first time since arriving on this chaotic planet, she felt a flicker of something unexpected. Not understanding. Not yet. But its possibility. This facility is not on my approved visitation schedule, Lysithea noted as they approached a sprawling complex nestled in a valley 20 kilometers from the city. Unlike the gleaming towers of New Shanghai, this place was largely underground, with only modest structures visible on the surface. The Nexus isn't generally open to diplomatic missions, Meridian acknowledged, guiding their transport toward a landing pad. I called in several favors to arrange this visit. Lysithea's antennae twitched with suspicion. Explain its purpose. It's easier to show you. Meridian landed the craft with practiced precision. The Nexus is where Earth's greatest failures become our pathway to the future. Underground, the facility expanded into vast chambers connected by transparent walkways. Lysithea followed Meridian through security checkpoints where her diplomatic credentials were carefully verified. Despite her reservations, curiosity propelled her forward. They stopped at a viewing platform overlooking an enormous cavern. Below, hundreds of humans worked amidst a bewildering array of equipment and holographic displays. What am I observing? Lysithea asked. The Climate Reconciliation Project, Meridian replied. 50 years ago, Earth stood on the brink of environmental collapse. Our oceans were acidifying, weather patterns had destabilized, and millions were displaced by rising seas. Lysithea knew this history. Your species' inability to act collectively nearly destroyed your civilization, hardly a qualification for assembly membership. True, Meridian said, surprising her with their candor. We failed repeatedly. Politicians argued while coastlines vanished. Corporations profited from destruction. It was chaos, the very disorder you find so distasteful. Below them, technicians monitored massive holographic globes showing atmospheric and oceanic data streams. But then something changed, Meridian continued. Not suddenly, but gradually. Not from central authority, but from thousands of dispersed initiatives that eventually coalesced. The Nexus began as 3 separate projects on 3 continents. Now it coordinates global environmental restoration. They proceeded to another chamber where vast arrays of biological samples were stored in cryogenic units. We've revived 17 extinct species in the past decade, Meridian explained. Restored 4 major ecosystems previously considered irrecoverable. The North Atlantic carbonate balance has stabilized for the first time in a century. These accomplishments, while notable, emerged from crisis your species created, Lysithea pointed out. Exactly. Meridian's enthusiasm was startling. That's precisely what I wanted you to understand. Humans don't excel at preventing disasters. We're too divided, too short-sighted. What we excel at is surviving them, learning from them, and emerging stronger. They guided Lysithea to a circular chamber ringed with historical displays, images of flooded cities, dust storms, refugee camps. At the center stood a simple memorial, names scrolling endlessly on a cylindrical hologram. 300 million lives lost to environmental catastrophe, Meridian said quietly. Our greatest shame. But from that failure came our most important quality, collective resilience. Lysithea studied the memorial, all 4 eyes tracking different sections of the scrolling names. The Araxian Consortium has never experienced failure on such a scale, she said, but her tone lacked its earlier dismissiveness. And that's your strength, Meridian replied. Perfect planning, flawless execution. But the galaxy isn't predictable, Ambassador. The assembly needs species who can adapt when the unexpected occurs. Lysithea moved closer to one of the historical displays, a family huddled on a rooftop as waters rose around them. Your argument is that failure qualifies humans for membership? Our response to failure qualifies us, Meridian corrected. Look at this. They led her to the final chamber, where the largest holographic display yet showed a real-time model of Earth's integrated environmental systems: atmosphere, oceans, land use, energy flows, all in dynamic equilibrium. 20 years ago, this balance was theoretical. Now it's reality. Not perfect, not permanent, but remarkable given where we started. We didn't just recover. We created new methods of planetary management that we're already sharing with other, newly space-bound species. Lysithea studied the display with genuine interest. The system's complexity was impressive, the interdependencies carefully managed through a distributed network rather than centralized control, an approach fundamentally different from Araxian methodologies. You have one more location to show me, she said finally. My allocated time is running short. As they returned to the transport, Lysithea found herself processing what she'd witnessed. The Nexus represented something absent from her previous assessments of humanity, the capacity to transform catastrophic failure into innovation. It was chaotic, certainly. Inefficient, without question. But there was something in the approach that the ordered precision of Araxian thinking might never have discovered. For the first time, Lysithea considered whether chaos might possess virtues her species had never recognized. Their final destination stood isolated on a small island in the middle of a vast lake, a single structure of modest proportions surrounded by carefully tended gardens. As their transport descended, Lysithea noted the absence of the technological trappings she had come to expect from human facilities. This appears to be a private residence, she observed, suspicion evident in her clicking speech. I remind you that diplomatic protocols prohibit. It's not a residence, Meridian interrupted gently. It's the Concordance, the most important place you'll visit on Earth, though it won't look like it. They landed on a small pad near the structure. Unlike the security measures at the Nexus, here there were no scanners, no identification checks, only an elderly human who greeted them with a simple nod at the garden's entrance. Welcome, Liaison Frost, the elder said, then turned to Lysithea. And welcome, Ambassador Vox. I am Keeper Oriel. Please, follow me. The garden paths wound between flowering plants and small reflecting pools. Lysithea noticed subtle patterns in the arrangement, mathematical sequences that whispered of order beneath the apparent randomness. It reminded her strangely of home. What function does this concordance serve? She asked as they walked. Oriel answered before Meridian could speak. We remember, Ambassador, that is our primary function. Inside the main building, the space opened into a circular chamber with a domed ceiling. The walls were lined with display cases containing objects that appeared remarkably ordinary: handwritten letters, simple tools, clothing items, children's toys. I don't understand, Lysithea admitted, her diplomatic reserve momentarily forgotten. Meridian gestured to the displays. Every item here played a role in preventing human extinction. Not the grand technological solutions or government programs, but the small human moments that changed our course. Oriel led them to a display containing what appeared to be a crude imaging device, a camera from Earth's mid-industrial period. This belonged to Eliza Verne, who documented the labor conditions in factories during the Second Industrial Revolution. Her images changed labor laws across continents and prevented millions of deaths. They moved to another case containing a simple bound journal, Dr. Kaleo Nakano's personal diary, where he first documented the atmospheric anomalies that would later be recognized as indicators of climate collapse. His observations came 20 years before official science acknowledged the crisis. Lysithea studied each artifact with increasing interest as they circled the room. A handmade flag from the water rights movement, a child's drawing that inspired, an efficient solar collector design, a musical recording that united warring factions during the resource conflicts. These are Extremely minor elements in historical events of great magnitude, she observed. Exactly, Oriel said with a smile. The inflection points of human history aren't always grand gestures or breakthrough technologies. More often they're small, acts of courage, creativity, or compassion that ripple outward. The elderly keeper led them to the center of the chamber where a simple holographic globe rotated slowly. Unlike the sophisticated environmental system at the Nexus, this display showed pinpoints of light, millions of them, appearing and disappearing across the planet's surface. What am I observing? Lysithea asked. Acts of connection, Oriel explained. Each light represents a moment where one human's action meaningfully alters another's path. Some are dramatic, saving a life, sharing, a crucial discovery. Most are seemingly insignificant, a kindness to a stranger, a question that sparks a new idea. Lysithea watched the dancing lights, her four eyes tracking different regions simultaneously. The pattern appeared random at first, but longer observation revealed subtle flows, concentrations that formed and dissolved like stellar nurseries. This is how humanity functions, Meridian said quietly. Not through perfect order or centralized direction, but through millions of connections, adaptations, and small corrections. It looks like chaos up close, but reveals pattern at sufficient distance, Lysithea finished. Like your city lights viewed from the mountain. Precisely. Oriel gestured toward a small alcove separate from the main displays. Before you leave, Ambassador, there is one more artifact you should see. In the alcove stood a simple display, case containing what appeared to be a piece of metallic debris, partially melted and scarred with heat. From your first contact vessel, Oriel said. The one that crashed in the Taklamakan Desert 97 Earth years ago. Lysithea's antennae stiffened in surprise. The incident is recorded in our archives. The crew perished. It was determined that atmospheric conditions were miscalculated. Not entirely accurate, Oriel said gently. 3 crew members survived the initial crash. Local nomads found them and, despite having no concept of extraterrestrial life, cared for them for 7 days before they succumbed to injuries. This information was not shared with the consortium, Lysithea said, her voice unnaturally still. The nomads had no way to report it to authorities. By the time international teams located the crash site, your recovery vessels had already removed all evidence. The nomads kept a single fragment, this one, as a memorial to the visitors who came from the stars. Lysithea stared at the fragment, her compound eyes reflecting its scarred surface. How did it come to be here? The grandson of one of those nomads became a xenobiologist. When humanity developed faster than light travel and encountered the Araxian Consortium, he recognized your species from his grandfather's descriptions. He donated this fragment to the Concordance. Something shifted in Lysithea's perception. The evidence of humanity's compassion toward alien beings, strangers they could not communicate with, who arrived without warning or explanation, struck deeper than all the technological achievements or environmental recoveries. Thank you for showing me this, she said finally, her usually precise translator conveying an unusual softness in her tone. As they departed the Concordance, Lysithea remained silent, processing all she had witnessed. Her scheduled 3 hours, with Meridian, had concluded, yet the observations gathered defied easy categorization in her assessment protocols. Humanity's chaos contained patterns her ordered mind was only beginning to perceive. Lysithea canceled her official appointments. The following day, a decision that generated concerned inquiries from both her Araxian superiors and the Earth Diplomatic Corps. She responded with a terse message about essential independent research, then spent the day in her quarters analyzing everything she had seen. She created complex models comparing Araxian and human development trajectories, ran simulations of cultural interaction scenarios, and reviewed centuries of observational data with new perspectives. When traditional analytical frameworks proved insufficient, she did something unprecedented in her diplomatic career. She improvised new ones. By evening, her quarters had transformed into a chaotic workspace that would have horrified her colleagues. Holographic, displays overlapping, data streams crossing, research materials scattered across every surface. The irony wasn't lost on her. A chime at her door interrupted her contemplation. "Enter," she called, not bothering to restore order to the space. Meridian stepped inside, then paused, taking in the transformed environment. "I see you've been busy. Ambassador, your observations yesterday were provocative," Lysithea admitted. "They required thorough analysis. And your conclusion? Incomplete. I have discovered significant gaps in the consortium's understanding of human development patterns." She gestured toward a particularly complex holographic model. "Your species' historical trajectory defies standard predictive modeling." Meridian moved closer, studying the displays. "Because we keep surviving things that should have destroyed us?" "Precisely. By Araxian progression models, humanity should have collapsed at 17 distinct historical junctures. Instead, you emerged stronger from each crisis. And that troubles. Your assessment?" Lysithea's mandibles clicked rapidly, an expression of intense concentration. "The assembly was founded on principles of order, cooperation, and predictable development. Species are admitted when they demonstrate sufficient stability to contribute without disruption. But you're wondering if that standard misses something." "Important," Meridian suggested. Lysithea turned all four eyes toward the human. "I am considering the possibility that the assembly's criteria themselves may require adaptation." The admission felt dangerously close to heresy. The Araxian Consortium had established the founding principles of the assembly 10,000 years before humans discovered fire. To question them was to question the cosmic order itself. "I need to see more," she decided suddenly. "Not curated experiences or diplomatic presentations, but everyday human existence." Meridian looked surprised, but pleased. "What did you have in mind?" "Take me where ordinary humans gather, where they interact without official supervision or awareness of observation." "You want a people watch?" Meridian smiled. "I know just the place." The central plaza of New Shanghai's arts district teemed with humanity in all its chaotic glory. Street performers competed for attention, food vendors filled the air with competing aromas, and crowds moved in seemingly random patterns through the open space. Lysithea and Meridian sat at an outdoor cafe, positioned to observe the activity. Despite her environmental suit marking her clearly as non-human, few people paid her any particular attention. Just another visitor in a city accustomed to extraterrestrial diplomats. "This is overwhelming," Lysithea admitted, her sensory apparatus struggling to process the multitude of inputs. "Too much?" Meridian asked, concerned. "No. It is, educational." She focused on a group of children operating a small anti-gravity device as a toy, their laughter carrying across the plaza. "Your young appear to learn through unstructured play rather than formal instruction." "Both, actually. Traditional education still exists, but we discovered that unstructured interaction develops problem-solving abilities that formal teaching can't provide." Lysithea watched as one child's errant manipulation sent the anti-gravity device floating toward the cafe. Without instruction or apparent communication, the group immediately reorganized, two children changing direction to intercept the wayward toy, another calling out to warn bystanders, two more calculating a different angle of approach. "They function as a collective intelligence," she observed with surprise, "without centralized direction." "Humans have always been pack animals," Meridian said. "We operate best in groups, reading each other's intentions, adjusting to changing circumstances together." Throughout the evening, Lysithea observed similar patterns repeatedly. Strangers coordinating without explicit communication, complex social negotiations resolved through subtle cues, information spreading through the crowd like ripples in water. When a street performer's equipment malfunctioned, nearby humans instinctively formed a protective circle, while others offered technical assistance. When an elderly person appeared confused at the transit station, 3 separate individuals provided guidance almost simultaneously. "It's beautiful in its way," Lysithea said finally. "Chaotic but harmonious." "That's the paradox of humanity," Meridian replied. We're constantly balancing opposing forces, individuality and collectivism, competition and cooperation, tradition and innovation. The Araxian way values stability above all, Lysithea said more to herself than to Meridian. We perfect systems and maintain them for millennia. Your species reinvents itself with each generation. Both approaches have merit. Yes. The admission felt significant. I believe I have sufficient data for my assessment now. As they prepared to leave, a small commotion erupted near the plaza's center. A street performer had begun creating illuminated patterns in the air, manipulating light through some combination of technology and artistry. The crowd gathered, their faces upturned in collective wonder. The patterns morphed and danced, forming complex geometric shapes that dissolved and reformed. To Lysithea's amazement, the random audience members began to participate, using personal devices to add their own light contributions, gradually building a collaborative aerial sculpture. Without planning or direction, they were creating stars, in the darkness, constellations of human making. Your 3 hours have extended considerably, Ambassador, Meridian observed gently. I hope it was worth your time. Lysithea's 4 eyes remained fixed on the improvised light show, on the faces illuminated beneath it, on the spontaneous order emerging from apparent chaos. It was, she said simply. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in her understanding of humanity's place among the stars. The assembly hall orbited Earth at Lagrangian point L1, its crystalline structure catching the sun's light and fracturing it into rainbow patterns across its chambers. Representatives from 200 galactic civilizations filled the tiered seating, their diverse morphologies creating a living mosaic of sentient life. Lysithea stood at the presentation dais, her formal diplomatic attire glittering with the embedded symbols of her rank and lineage. Before her, the assessment interface awaited her final report, the culmination of decades of Araxian observation and her own critical evaluation. In the diplomatic observation gallery, Meridian watched silently alongside Earth's official representatives. 1 week had passed since their night in the plaza. They had not spoken since. Ambassador Vox intoned the assembly arbiter, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate mobility sphere. The consortium's assessment carries particular weight. Given your founding status, please present your determination regarding species 4572b, self-designated humanity, and their petition for full assembly membership. Lysithea activated the interface, but instead of uploading her prepared report, she stepped back from the dais. Esteemed representatives, she began, her translator rendering her words in the standard assembly language. The Araxian Consortium has observed Earth for 7 centuries. In that time, we have witnessed the development of human civilization through industrial advancement, environmental crisis, technological renaissance, and eventual starfaring capability. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing scenes from human history, early steam engines, atmospheric degradation, quantum computers, the first faster-than-light journey. By traditional assessment metrics, Lysithea continued, humanity presents a contradictory case. They have repeatedly approached self-extinction through conflict and environmental mismanagement. Their governance structures lack the stability and longevity the assembly traditionally requires. Their technological development has followed irregular patterns inconsistent with established progress models. Murmurs spread through the chamber. In the gallery, Earth's representatives exchanged concerned glances. Meridian remained motionless, watching Lysithea with unwavering attention. However, she said, her voice cutting through the growing noise, my final assessment requires the assembly to consider something unprecedented. The chamber quieted as Lysithea manipulated the interface. The holographic displays shifted to show new images. The city lights viewed from Mount Moirai, the environmental systems at the Nexus, the illuminated network of human connections from the concordance, the spontaneous collaboration in the plaza. Humanity represents a developmental pathway not previously encountered in the Assembly's 20,000-year history, what I term adaptive chaos theory. Their civilization does not progress through stability and order, but through crisis, adaptation, and emergent reorganization. She turned to address the assembly directly, all four eyes sweeping across the gathered representatives. The Araxian Consortium has always valued order as the path to advancement. Most assembly members share this perspective. We have built a galactic community based on predictability and controlled development. Lysithea paused, mandibles clicking softly before continuing. But the cosmos itself is not orderly. Stars collapse, planets die. Entire systems face extinction-level events. In our pursuit of perfect stability, we may have cultivated a dangerous brittleness. Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. To question the Assembly's founding principles was unprecedented from an Araxian diplomat. Humanity offers something the Assembly currently lacks, demonstrated resilience through catastrophic change. Their chaos contains patterns of adaptation we have not mastered. Their seemingly disordered approach to civilization has produced solutions no ordered mind would conceive. The holographic displays merged into a single image, a visualization of humanity's development trajectory, not as a straight line but as a complex spiral, contracting during crises, expanding during recoveries, but always moving forward. Therefore, my assessment contains two recommendations. First, that humanity be granted full assembly membership, not despite their chaotic nature, but because of it. And second, that the Assembly establish a new advisory council on civilizational resilience, with human representatives holding key positions. The chamber erupted in shocked discussion. In the gallery, Earth's officials appeared stunned. Meridian simply smiled. Ambassador Vox, the arbiter said when order was restored, your recommendations are highly irregular. The consortium has never advocated for changing assembly structures to accommodate a new species. Correct, arbiter. Because in 20,000 years, we have never encountered a species whose difference represented not a deficiency, but a complementary strength. Lysithea's antennae lifted in the Araxian gesture of absolute conviction. The Assembly faces unprecedented challenges as we expand into regions beyond the Orion Arm. We require not just order, but adaptability. Not just stability, but resilience. She turned toward the Earth gallery, her gaze finding Meridian. I came to Earth expecting to confirm its unworthiness. Instead, I found a mirror that revealed the limitations of my own perspective. Humanity's chaotic brilliance does not diminish the galaxy's order, it completes it. The voting process took 3 hours, an extraordinarily prolonged deliberation by Assembly standards. When the results appeared on the central display, they showed narrow approval for both recommendations. Humanity would join the stars as equals, and the Assembly itself would begin to change. Later, as Earth celebrated its official welcome into galactic society, Lysithea found Meridian on an observation deck overlooking the night side of the planet. Below them, city lights traced human civilization across the darkness, constellations of their own making. Your speech was unexpected, Meridian said by way of greeting. Earth's diplomatic corps is still in shock. The consortium is equally disturbed, Lysithea replied, with what might have been amusement. I have been reassigned from diplomatic service. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. I have accepted a position as cultural liaison to Earth, the first of its kind. It seems my superiors consider me excessively influenced by human perspectives. They believe I require monitoring. Meridian laughed softly. And what do you believe? Lysithea turned her gaze toward the glittering planet below. I believe that understanding requires proximity, that wisdom often emerges from apparent disorder, that different paths can lead to the same stars. She gestured toward Earth's scattered lights. For 7 centuries, we saw only chaos in your cities, your politics, your development. We never recognized the patterns within that chaos, the adaptive resilience that allowed you to survive catastrophes that would have shattered more ordered civilizations. And now? Meridian asked. Now I see stars and city lights, Lysithea replied. Constellations created not by cosmic accident, but by conscious beings finding their way through darkness together. Her mandibles clicked softly. The closest her species came to a smile. It is a perspective I wish to understand more fully. Below them, Earth continued its rotation, darkness giving way to dawn along its eastern edge. New light spilled across, the planet's surface illuminating natural landscapes and human settlements alike. Order and chaos, separate yet inseparable, each incomplete without the other. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador," Meridian said quietly. "No longer Ambassador," Lysithea corrected. "Just Lysithea now." "Welcome to Earth, Lysithea," Meridian amended. "The stars have much to show you." "As do your city lights," she replied, 4. Eyes reflecting the glittering constellations of human creation spreading across the planet's darkened face. "As do your city lights,"